The rain came down hard on the empty road, and Sophie Whitfield's hands were shaking as she stared at the flat tire on her car. It was almost 9 at night, the sky was dark, and her phone battery had just died in the middle of trying to call for help. She was 16 years old, alone on a stretch of highway outside the city, and every passing car made her heart beat faster, because she did not know if the next one would stop to help her or hurt her. She pulled her jacket tighter and looked around. There were no streetlights here, only the glow of her car's hazard lights blinking against the wet pavement. She had driven this road 100 times, always with a driver, always safe inside her mother's world of security guards and private cars. Tonight was different. Tonight she had wanted to feel normal, just once, driving herself to meet a friend without anyone watching over her. Now she regretted it. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter as they came closer. Sophie's chest tightened. She stepped back from the road, unsure whether to wave for help or hide. The car slowed down, and a tired-looking man stepped out, wearing a stained work jacket and carrying a small toolbox. He looked like someone coming home from a long shift, not like someone who had time to stop for a stranger. His name was Marcus Delaney, and he had just finished a double shift at the auto repair shop where he worked. His feet ached, his back ached, and all he wanted was to get home to his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, who was waiting for him with a plate of cold dinner and 100 questions about her day. But when he saw the young girl standing beside a car with a flat tire, alone in the rain, something in him would not let him drive past. "Are you okay?" he called out, keeping his distance so he would not frighten her. Sophie hesitated. Her mother had trained her since childhood never to trust strangers, never to accept help from someone she did not know. But something about this man's voice was calm, tired, and honest. There was no trick in it, no hidden agenda. He looked like a man who had seen hard days and understood what it meant to struggle. "My tire," she said, pointing weakly. "I don't know how to change it. My phone died. I don't know what to do." Marcus nodded and walked closer, keeping his hands visible, his movements slow and careful. He had a daughter of his own, and he knew what it felt like to imagine her stranded somewhere at night. If someone would stop for Lily one day, he hoped they would be kind, patient, and safe. So that was exactly what he decided to be. "I can fix that for you," he said. "Won't take long. You can stand right there and watch if you want. I just need a few minutes." Sophie stepped back but did not walk away. She watched as he opened his toolbox, pulled out a jack, and got to work without asking her a single question about who she was or why she was out here alone. He did not ask for her name. He did not ask about her expensive car or her designer bag sitting on the passenger seat. He simply worked, humming quietly to himself, the same way he worked on cars every day at the shop. The rain slowed to a drizzle as he loosened the bolts one by one. Sophie found herself relaxing, just a little. She had expected questions, maybe even judgment, but this man treated her like any other person who needed help. It felt strange and, in a good way, refreshing. "You're good at this," she said, trying to make conversation to calm her own nerves. "Been doing it since I was younger than you," Marcus replied, not looking up from his work. "My father taught me. Said knowing how to fix things is never a waste, no matter what life gives you. Is it hard, fixing cars for a job?" He smiled slightly. "It's honest work. Keeps food on the table. That's all that matters." Something about the simplicity of his answer stayed with her. Sophie had grown up around people who spoke in complicated sentences about profit margins, investments, and business strategies. This man spoke about food on the table like it was the only truth that mattered, and in that moment, it felt like the most important truth she had ever heard. Within 15 minutes, the spare tire was in place. Marcus tightened the last bolt, wiped his hands on a cloth from his bag, and stood up straight, stretching his back with a small groan. "There you go," he said. "That should get you home safe. Drive slow, though. That's just a spare, not built for speed." Sophie reached for her bag, pulling out her wallet, fingers trembling slightly. "Please, let me pay you. You didn't have to stop. You don't even know me." Marcus shook his head immediately, holding up a hand. "No need for that. Anyone would have done the same. But you really helped me. I want to give you something." "You already gave me something," he said, closing his toolbox with a soft click. "You let an old, tired man feel useful tonight. That's enough for me." Sophie stared at him, unsure what to say. In her world, nothing came without a price, a favor owed, a deal made. But this man was walking away expecting nothing at all. At least tell me your name, she said quickly, before he could leave. He paused, glancing back at her with a tired but warm smile. Marcus Delaney. I'm Sophie, she said. Thank you, Marcus, really. He nodded once. Be safe getting home, Sophie. And next time, keep your phone charged. With that, he turned and walked back toward his own car, an old, rusted vehicle that looked like it had seen better decades. He did not wait for further thanks. He did not linger for recognition. He simply drove off into the night, back toward his small apartment where his daughter was waiting. Sophie stood there for a moment, watching his taillights disappear around the bend. Her hands were still trembling, but not from fear anymore. It was something else, a feeling she could not quite name. She got into her car, started the engine, and drove home slowly, replaying the encounter over and over in her mind. When she arrived at the enormous gated house she called home, security lights flicked on automatically, and a guard rushed to check on her before she had even parked. Inside, her mother, Eleanor Whitfield, was pacing the living room floor, phone in hand, panic written across her face. Sophie, where have you been? I've been calling for an hour. Eleanor rushed forward, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace, before pulling back to check her for injuries. My phone died, Sophie explained quickly. I got a flat tire on the highway. I was stuck there, Mom, and I didn't know what to do. Eleanor's face turned pale. You were alone on the highway at night with a flat tire? Sophie, do you understand how dangerous that could have been? I know, but someone stopped and helped me. Eleanor's grip on her daughter's shoulders tightened slightly. Who? Did you get his name? Sophie, people who stop for young girls alone at night are not always. Mom, he wasn't like that, Sophie interrupted, her voice firm. He didn't ask for anything. He just fixed the tire and left. He wouldn't even take money from me. Eleanor studied her daughter's face carefully. She had built an empire out of caution, out of never trusting anyone who seemed too kind without a reason. In her experience, people who wanted nothing were often hiding something they wanted even more. But the look in Sophie's eyes was not fear. It was something closer to wonder. Tell me everything, Eleanor said quietly, guiding her daughter to sit down on the couch. From the beginning. Sophie told her everything. The flat tire, the rain, the fear of being alone, and then the tired man in the work jacket who stopped without hesitation, fixed her car with quiet skill, and refused every offer of payment. She described the way he spoke about honest work and food on the table, the way he asked for nothing but her safety in return. Eleanor listened silently, her sharp business mind processing every detail, but underneath the calculation, something softer stirred in her chest. She thought about all the people in her life who wanted something from her, the business partners with hidden agendas, the acquaintances who suddenly appeared whenever her company made headlines, the constant weight of being someone people wanted to use. And then there was this stranger, this Marcus Delaney, who had helped her daughter and asked for nothing at all. Did he tell you his name? Eleanor asked finally. Marcus, Sophie said. Marcus Delaney. He works at some auto shop. He seemed tired, Mom, like he'd been working all day. But he still stopped for me. Eleanor sat back against the couch, staring at nothing in particular, her mind turning over the story again and again. She had spent years building walls around herself and her daughter, trusting almost no one, assuming the worst of strangers to protect what mattered most. But tonight, a stranger with nothing to gain had protected her daughter when she could not be there herself. I want to find him, Eleanor said quietly. Sophie blinked in surprise. Why? He didn't want anything. He'll probably feel strange if you show up trying to repay him. I know, Eleanor admitted. But Sophie, in this world, that's exactly why I need to find him. Not because I owe him money. Because I need to understand a man who helps a stranger and asks for nothing at all. I haven't met someone like that in a very long time. Sophie studied her mother's face, seeing something there she rarely saw, a flicker of genuine curiosity, untouched by business strategy or caution. For the first time in longer than she could remember, her mother looked like she wanted to believe in something good. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, leaving the night calm and quiet. But inside the Whitfield house, something had already begun to shift. A small spark, lit by a stranger's kindness on a dark and lonely road, one that neither of them yet understood, would soon change everything. Marcus, meanwhile, had no idea that his simple act of kindness had planted a seed that would soon grow into something far bigger than a fixed tire on a rainy night. He arrived home to his small apartment, where Lily was waiting at the kitchen table, drawing pictures with a set of worn-out crayons. She looked up the moment he walked through the door, her face lighting up instantly. "Daddy, you're home. I made you a picture," she said, holding up a drawing of two stick figures standing beside a car, one large and one small, holding hands. Marcus smiled tiredly, setting down his toolbox and walking over to kiss the top of her head. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Is that us?" "Yes. I drew us fixing a car together, like you do at work." He chuckled softly, sitting down beside her at the small table. "Maybe one day you'll help me fix cars for real." "Really?" Lily's eyes widened with excitement. "Really," he said. "But first, let's get you fed and into bed. It's getting late." As he warmed up the leftover dinner Lily had saved for him, Marcus thought briefly about the girl on the highway, hoping she made it home safely. He had no way of knowing her last name, no idea of the empire her mother controlled, and certainly no idea that across the city, a powerful woman was already determined to find him. To Marcus, it had simply been another small kindness in a long day of hard work, nothing more than what any decent person should do. But kindness, even the quiet kind that expects nothing in return, has a way of traveling further than anyone expects. And somewhere across the city, under the soft glow of chandelier lights, Eleanor Whitfield was already making a call to her private security team, determined to find the man who had helped her daughter and, without knowing it, had already begun to help her remember what it felt like to trust someone again. The security office at Whitfield Industries was quiet, except for the hum of computer screens and the soft clicking of keyboards. Eleanor stood behind her lead investigator, a sharp, methodical woman named Grace Bennett, watching as traffic camera footage scrolled across the monitor. It was just past midnight, but Eleanor had no intention of sleeping until she had answers. "There," Grace said, pausing the footage. "That's the stretch of highway your daughter described, and there's a vehicle pulled over around the time she mentioned." Eleanor leaned closer, studying the grainy image. A man's shape could be seen crouched beside a car, working under the glow of hazard lights. It was not much to go on, but it confirmed Sophie's story was accurate down to the smallest detail. "Can you get a clearer image? A license plate? Anything?" Grace adjusted the footage, zooming in as much as the resolution allowed. The plate was blurry, but a partial number was visible, along with the make and model of the vehicle. It was enough of a start. "I can run this against local repair shop employee records," Grace offered. "If he mentioned working at an auto shop, and this is his personal vehicle, there's a good chance we can narrow down the area he lives and works in within a day or two." Eleanor nodded firmly. "Do it, quietly. I don't want this turning into some kind of public spectacle. I just want to find him and thank him properly, in private, without cameras or headlines involved." She meant what she said. In her line of work, everything eventually became a story for someone else to profit from, twisted into headlines about the billionaire businesswoman and her daughter's dangerous night on a lonely highway. Eleanor wanted none of that. She wanted to protect the quiet decency of what this stranger had done, not turn it into content for gossip columns. Over the next 2 days, Grace's team worked carefully, cross-referencing repair shop employee lists across the city with the partial license plate and vehicle description. It did not take long. There were only a handful of shops in that part of the city, and fewer still with employees who matched the general description Sophie had given. By the third day, Grace walked into Eleanor's office with a folder in hand, a satisfied look on her face. "We found him," she said, placing the folder on the desk. "Marcus Delaney, 34 years old, works as a mechanic at Baxter's Auto Repair, about 20 minutes from where your daughter's car broke down. He's been there for 6 years." Eleanor opened the folder, scanning the details quickly. A basic employment history, an address in a modest apartment complex, a record clean of anything troubling. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious, just a working man with a steady, unremarkable life. "Any family?" Eleanor asked. "A daughter, 7 years old, named Lily." Grace hesitated slightly before continuing. "His wife passed away almost 5 years ago. Complications during a routine medical procedure, according to the records. He's been raising his daughter alone ever since." Eleanor sat back in her chair, absorbing the information slowly. A widowed father, working long hours at a low-paying job, raising a young daughter by himself, and still, in the middle of exhaustion and grief and hardship, he had stopped on a rainy highway to help a stranger's child without asking for anything in return. "Thank you, Grace," Eleanor said softly. "That will be all for now." Once alone in her office, Eleanor stared out the large window overlooking the city skyline, her mind turning over everything she had just learned. She thought about her own life, the mansion, the private jets, the endless meetings and negotiations that consumed her every waking hour. She thought about how rarely she encountered genuine kindness anymore, how most people who approached her wanted something, a deal, an investment, an introduction, a favor. And then there was Marcus Delaney, a man with almost nothing extra to give, who had given anyway. That evening, Eleanor found herself unable to focus on the stack of contracts waiting for her signature. Instead, she found herself thinking about how to approach this man without frightening him, without making him feel like he was in trouble or being investigated. She wanted to thank him properly, but she also, if she was honest with herself, wanted to understand him. What kind of person still believed in helping strangers with nothing to gain? The next morning, Eleanor decided against sending an assistant or a formal letter. Instead, she chose to go herself, quietly, without an entourage of guards and cameras. She dressed simply, left her usual luxury car behind, and had Grace drive her to Baxter's Auto Repair in an unmarked vehicle. The shop was a modest building with a faded sign, oil stains marking the concrete outside, and the sound of tools clanking echoing from inside. Eleanor stepped out of the car, feeling strangely nervous, an unfamiliar sensation for a woman who regularly negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without blinking. Inside, she found a small waiting area with mismatched chairs and old magazines. A man behind the front counter looked up as she entered. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I'm looking for Marcus Delaney," Eleanor said. "Is he working today?" The man nodded toward the garage bay behind him. "He's in the back, finishing up a job. Should be done in a few minutes if you want to wait." Eleanor sat down, watching through a window as a man in a stained work jacket moved efficiently around a car, checking something under the hood with practiced precision. It was him. Even without seeing his face clearly, she recognized the tired efficiency her daughter had described, the quiet focus of someone who took pride in doing honest work well. A few minutes later, Marcus walked into the front area, wiping his hands on a cloth, his eyes landing on the unfamiliar woman sitting in the waiting area. Something about her posture, her expensive but understated clothing, and the careful way she studied him, made him pause slightly. "Can I help you?" he asked, echoing the front desk worker's earlier question. Eleanor stood, extending her hand. "Marcus Delaney? My name is Eleanor Whitfield. I believe you helped my daughter a few nights ago on the highway. A flat tire, late at night, in the rain." Recognition flickered across Marcus's face, though it was mixed with confusion. "The young girl? Sophie?" "Yes, Sophie is my daughter." Marcus glanced briefly at the front desk worker, who was watching the exchange with obvious curiosity, before gesturing toward a quieter corner of the waiting area. "Is she all right? Did something happen?" "She's fine," Eleanor assured him quickly. "More than fine, actually. She came home safely because of you. I wanted to come thank you in person." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to this kind of attention. "That really wasn't necessary, ma'am. I just did what anyone should have done." "That's exactly why I wanted to meet you," Eleanor said gently. "Because in my experience, not everyone does what they should. I wanted to understand the kind of person who stops for a stranger's daughter and refuses payment for it." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, clearly not comfortable being the center of praise. It wasn't a big deal. Anyone with basic tools could have fixed that tire. "But not everyone would have stopped," Eleanor pointed out. "Not everyone would have taken the time, especially after a long shift, especially with nothing to gain." There was a brief pause between them, filled only by the distant sound of tools clanking in the garage behind them. Eleanor studied his face carefully, seeing exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes, but also a quiet dignity that no amount of hardship had managed to erase. "I'd like to properly thank you," Eleanor continued. "Whatever that looks like to you. Money, a gift, anything within reason. Please, let me do something for you." Marcus shook his head firmly, the same way he had with Sophie on the highway. "I appreciate that, truly. But I can't accept anything for helping your daughter. It wouldn't feel right." Eleanor felt a small smile tug at the corner of her mouth despite herself. "You're a difficult man to thank, Marcus. I've been told that before," he admitted, a hint of tired humor creeping into his voice for the first time. Eleanor hesitated, glancing around the modest shop, noticing the worn furniture, the outdated equipment, the general sense of a business barely staying afloat, and then thinking about the small apartment address in Grace's report, home to a widowed father and his young daughter. "Can we talk somewhere more private?" she asked. "Just for a few minutes. I promise I'm not trying to make this uncomfortable for you." Marcus glanced at the clock on the wall, calculating whether he had time before his next scheduled job. "I have about 15 minutes before my next appointment. There's a small office in the back, if that works." They moved to a cramped office behind the garage, filled with paperwork and the smell of motor oil. Eleanor sat across from him, folding her hands carefully in her lap, choosing her words with more caution than she used in most business negotiations. "I read a little about your background," she admitted honestly, deciding that transparency was the best approach with a man who valued honesty so clearly. "I know about your wife. I'm very sorry for your loss." Marcus's expression tightened slightly, old grief flickering briefly across his features, before he composed himself. "Thank you. It's been a few years now. We manage. You're raising your daughter alone, working long hours, and you still stop to help a stranger on the side of the road," Eleanor continued softly. "That tells me something important about your character, Marcus. Something rare." "I just try to do right by people," he said simply. "That's all." Eleanor studied him for a long moment, an idea forming in her mind, one that had been quietly taking shape since she first heard Sophie's story 2 nights earlier. She had built an entire company on recognizing value where others overlooked it, on investing in potential rather than appearances, and sitting across from her was a man whose integrity alone represented a kind of value money could never buy. "I have a proposal for you," Eleanor said finally. "Not charity, not a handout. An actual opportunity, if you're interested." Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly cautious. "What kind of opportunity?" "My company is launching a new community-focused initiative," Eleanor explained. "It involves logistics, coordination, working directly with local repair shops and community programs to provide affordable services to families who need them most. It requires someone who understands the mechanical side of things, someone who understands hard work, and someone who genuinely cares about helping people. I think you'd be perfect for it." Marcus sat back slightly, processing her words carefully. "Mrs. Whitfield, I appreciate the thought, truly, but I don't have any experience running programs like that. I'm a mechanic. I fix cars. I don't know anything about logistics or corporate work." "You know more than you think," Eleanor said firmly. "You understand what people actually need, not just what looks good on paper. That's something my other employees, no matter how many degrees they hold, often struggle to grasp." Marcus glanced down at his oil-stained hands, clearly torn between disbelief and something that looked almost like hope, quickly suppressed. "This isn't charity, disguised as a job offer. It's a real position, with a real salary, and real responsibilities," Eleanor confirmed. "If you're not suited for it, we'll figure that out together, honestly. But I believe you are exactly the kind of person this initiative needs." The office fell silent for a moment, as Marcus considered her words carefully. Part of him wanted to refuse immediately, uncomfortable with the idea of accepting anything that felt like it came from pity. But another part of him, the part that thought constantly about Lily's future, about the bills that never seemed to stop piling up, about the tired ache in his back after every long shift, could not ignore the possibility sitting in front of him. "I need to think about it," he said finally. "This isn't a small decision. I have my daughter to consider." "Of course," Eleanor said, standing and reaching into her bag to retrieve a business card. "Take whatever time you need. But please, at least consider it seriously. This isn't a decision I'm making lightly either." Marcus took the card, studying the simple, elegant design, the name Eleanor Whitfield printed clearly across the top, alongside a direct phone number that surely very few people had access to. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for coming here yourself. Most people in your position would have sent someone else." "Most people in my position rarely meet someone like you," Eleanor replied honestly. "I wanted to see for myself." As Eleanor left the shop and climbed back into the unmarked car waiting outside, she found herself smiling faintly, an expression that felt foreign after months of stress and cautious business dealings. Grace glanced over from the driver's seat, curiosity evident on her face. "How did it go?" "Better than I expected," Eleanor admitted. "He's exactly the kind of man I hoped he would be." As the car pulled away from the shop, Eleanor glanced back one final time, watching Marcus stand in the doorway, staring at the business card in his hand. clearly lost in thought about a decision that could change everything for him and his daughter. Neither of them yet understood how deeply this single choice would reshape both of their lives, weaving together two very different worlds that had never been meant to cross, until one flat tire on a rainy highway had brought them together. That night, after closing the shop and picking Lily up from her after-school program, Marcus sat at their small kitchen table long after his daughter had fallen asleep, staring at the business card Eleanor had left him. He thought about his late wife, about the promises he had made to give Lily a good life despite everything that had gone wrong. He thought about the endless cycle of double shifts and exhaustion that barely covered their bills each month. And he thought about the strange, unexpected kindness of a powerful woman who had walked into his life, not to judge him, but to offer him something real, something earned through the very qualities that had defined him even during his hardest days. For the first time in a long time, Marcus allowed himself to imagine a different future, one where hard work might finally be rewarded with more than just survival. He picked up his phone, staring at the number on the card for a long moment, before finally setting it down again, deciding to sleep on the decision one more night. But deep down, he already knew which way his heart was leaning, even if his pride still needed a little more time to catch up. Morning light spilled through the thin curtains of Marcus's apartment, and he woke before his alarm, the business card still resting on the nightstand where he had left it the night before. He lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of Lily still asleep in the next room. His mind had been turning over Eleanor Whitfield's offer all night, sleep coming in short, restless bursts between long stretches of thinking. By the time he got up, showered, and made breakfast for Lily, he had made his decision, though his hands still trembled slightly as he dialed the number on the card. It rang twice before a calm voice answered. Eleanor Whitfield's office.
Hello, this is Marcus Delaney.
I spoke with Mrs. Whitfield yesterday at the auto shop. She left me her number. There was a brief pause, followed by the sound of papers shuffling. Yes, Mr. Delaney, she's expecting your call. One moment, please. A few seconds later, Eleanor's voice came through, warmer than he expected. Marcus, I'm glad you called. I wanted to talk more about the position you mentioned, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. If the offer's still on the table. It absolutely is, Eleanor replied. Would you be available to come by my office this afternoon? I'd like to walk you through the details properly, and you can decide from there whether it's the right fit. Marcus glanced at the clock, calculating his shift schedule. I finish work at 4. I could come by around 5, if that works. 5 is perfect. I'll have my assistant send you the address. After hanging up, Marcus stood in his small kitchen for a long moment, feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and cautious hope settle in his chest. Lily wandered in, still in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Who was that, Daddy? Just someone about a possible new job, he said, ruffling her hair gently. Nothing certain yet, sweetheart, but maybe something good. Lily tilted her head curiously. A better job than fixing cars? Different, Marcus said thoughtfully. But maybe better if it works out. We'll see. That afternoon, after finishing his shift at the shop, Marcus changed into the nicest clothes he owned, a simple button-up shirt that had seen better days, and drove across the city toward the towering glass building that housed Whitfield Industries headquarters. The sheer size of the building intimidated him as he stepped out of his car, glancing up at the reflective windows stretching high into the sky. Inside, the lobby was all polished marble and quiet elegance, entirely unlike anything he was used to. A receptionist greeted him warmly, directing him toward a private elevator that carried him up to the top floor, where Eleanor's office awaited. When the elevator doors opened, Eleanor was already standing there, having clearly anticipated his arrival. Marcus, thank you for coming. Thank you for having me, he replied, glancing around at the sleek modern office space, feeling distinctly out of place in his worn shirt among the polished furniture and expensive artwork. She led him into her private office, a large space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Sophie was there as well, sitting near the window, and her face lit up the moment she saw him. Marcus! Mr. Delaney, she corrected herself quickly, standing up. It's really nice to see you again. Sophie, he said, offering a warm smile. Glad to see you made it home safely that night, and every night since. Thanks to you, she said sincerely. Eleanor gestured toward a comfortable seating area near the window, and the three of them sat down together, a folder of documents already prepared on the low table between them. Let me explain exactly what this position involves, Eleanor began, opening the folder. We're launching a community outreach program called Roadway Forward. It's designed to provide affordable vehicle maintenance and emergency roadside assistance to families who otherwise cannot afford proper repairs, particularly single parents and low-income households. Marcus listened carefully, leaning forward slightly as she continued. We need someone who understands the mechanical side deeply, someone who can help design service protocols, train new staff, and make sure the program actually serves the people it's meant to help, rather than becoming just another corporate initiative that looks good on paper but does little real good, Eleanor explained. I believe you're exactly the person who can make sure that doesn't happen. The salary is substantially higher than what you currently earn, she continued, sliding a document across the table toward him, along with full health benefits for you and Lily, and a flexible schedule that would allow you far more time with your daughter than your current double shifts permit. Marcus stared at the numbers on the page, his throat suddenly tight. It was more money than he had ever imagined earning, enough to finally move Lily into a better school district, enough to stop worrying every single month about whether the bills would be paid on time. This feels like too much, he admitted quietly. I don't have any experience with something this big. You have experience with the thing that matters most, Eleanor said firmly. You understand what struggling families actually need. That's not something you can teach in business school, Marcus. That's something you live. Sophie spoke up then, her voice earnest. You helped me without knowing anything about who I was or what I could offer you. That's exactly the kind of person my mom's company needs, leading a program built around helping people who need it most. Marcus looked between mother and daughter, feeling the weight of their sincerity pressing against his own doubts. He thought about Lily, about the promise he had made to her mother before she passed, a promise to build a good life for their daughter no matter what obstacles came their way. Can I have a few days to think it through? He asked. This is a big decision. I want to make sure I'm doing right by my daughter. Of course, Eleanor said without hesitation. Take whatever time you need. There's no pressure here, Marcus. I just want you to know, the door is open, whenever you're ready to walk through it. Over the following days, Marcus wrestled with the decision constantly, his mind circling between excitement and fear. He spoke with his coworkers at the shop, careful not to reveal too many details, simply mentioning he had an opportunity to consider. His longtime coworker and friend, a kind older man named Walter, encouraged him strongly. Son, you've been working yourself into the ground for years, Walter said one afternoon, wiping grease from his hands. If someone's offering you a real chance to give your daughter a better life, you'd be a fool not to take it. What if I fail? Marcus admitted quietly. What if I'm not cut out for something like that? Walter clapped a firm hand on his shoulder. You've never failed at anything you cared enough about to try properly. This is no different. Meanwhile, back at the Whitfield estate, Sophie and Eleanor found themselves discussing Marcus frequently over dinner, both hoping quietly that he would accept the offer, though for slightly different reasons. Sophie had grown genuinely fond of the memory of that rainy night, the way a stranger's simple kindness had shifted something inside her perspective on people and trust. Eleanor, meanwhile, found herself thinking about Marcus more often than she expected, curious about the quiet strength that seemed to define him, despite everything life had thrown his way. Do you think he'll say yes? Sophie asked one evening, pushing food around her plate absently. I hope so, Eleanor admitted, for his sake, and for Lily's. But also, honestly, for the sake of the program itself, we need people like him. Just the program? Sophie asked, a teasing note creeping into her voice. Eleanor gave her daughter a warning look, though a faint smile tugged at her lips despite herself. Don't read too much into things, Sophie. I'm just saying, you've mentioned him at least 5 times since dinner started. Eleanor sighed, setting down her fork. He's an interesting man, that's all. It's rare to meet someone so grounded in a world full of people constantly chasing more than they need. A few days later, Marcus finally called Eleanor's office, his decision made after countless sleepless nights of careful consideration. When Eleanor answered personally, her voice carried a note of genuine hope she couldn't quite hide. Marcus, I was hoping to hear from you. I've thought it through carefully, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. I'd like to accept the position, if it's still available. Eleanor's relief was audible even through the phone. It's still very much available. I'm glad, Marcus, truly glad. They arranged for him to begin the following week. giving him time to properly resign from his position at Baxter's Auto Repair, a place that had employed him faithfully for 6 years despite its modest resources. His co-workers threw together a small, heartfelt farewell gathering on his final day, proud of him for taking a leap toward something better, even as they would miss his steady presence in the shop. Walter pulled him aside near the end of the gathering, gripping his hand firmly. "You've earned this, son. Don't let anyone, including yourself, ever make you feel otherwise. Thank you, Walter, for everything you taught me over the years. Just remember where you came from," Walter said with a knowing smile. "That's what'll keep you good at whatever you do next." On his first day at Whitfield Industries, Marcus arrived early, dressed in a new but simple suit he had purchased with careful budgeting, still uncomfortable in the unfamiliar formality of it. Eleanor met him personally at the entrance, introducing him to the small team he would be working alongside, mostly young professionals eager to make a genuine difference through the new community program. The work proved challenging at first, filled with unfamiliar terminology and corporate processes that felt worlds away from the simple, hands-on labor he was used to. But Marcus approached each challenge with the same quiet determination that had defined his years at the auto shop, asking thoughtful questions, listening carefully to feedback, and slowly finding his footing within the new environment. Meanwhile, an unexpected friendship began forming between Lily and Sophie, who had first met briefly during a company event Eleanor organized to introduce Marcus's new team. Despite the vast difference in their circumstances, Sophie found herself drawn to Lily's genuine warmth and easy laughter, so different from the guarded interactions she usually experienced with children from wealthy families constantly aware of social status and appearances. "You have a really cool car," Lily said during one visit to the Whitfield estate, staring wide-eyed at the collection of vehicles parked in the massive garage. "You want to see something even cooler?" Sophie asked, grinning as she led Lily toward a smaller building near the main house. "My mom has an old workshop where she keeps some vintage cars. Nobody really uses it anymore, but it's kind of amazing." The two girls spent hours exploring together, and Lily's easy curiosity and joyful energy slowly began chipping away at walls Sophie had built around herself over years of cautious, controlled interactions. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Sophie felt like she had a genuine friend, someone who liked her simply for who she was, without any calculation of social advantage. Back inside the main house, Eleanor and Marcus found themselves occasionally crossing paths during these visits, brief conversations gradually growing longer and more comfortable as weeks passed. Eleanor found herself genuinely looking forward to these moments, a feeling she hadn't experienced in longer than she cared to admit, having spent years focused entirely on business and protecting her daughter from a world she often viewed with deep suspicion. "You seem to be settling in well," Eleanor observed one afternoon, finding Marcus reviewing program logistics in the small office she had assigned him. "Still learning," he admitted honestly, glancing up from his paperwork. "But it's good work. Meaningful work. I appreciate the chance you gave me." "I meant what I said before," Eleanor replied. "You've brought something valuable to this program that we couldn't have found anywhere else, a perspective grounded in reality, not just theory." Marcus smiled slightly, setting down his pen. "It's strange being on this side of things, helping design a program meant for people like who I used to be. That's exactly why it works," Eleanor said softly. "You understand both sides of the equation." Their conversation was interrupted by Sophie and Lily bursting into the office, laughing about something from their earlier adventure in the workshop, momentarily filling the formal office space with genuine, unguarded joy. Eleanor and Marcus exchanged a brief glance, both quietly acknowledging, without words, how naturally their two very different worlds had begun weaving together, thread by thread, moment by moment, since that unexpected night on a rainy highway. Neither of them yet spoke openly about the growing warmth developing between them, cautious of moving too quickly, mindful of their responsibilities and the significant differences still separating their lives. But beneath the surface, something meaningful had clearly begun to take root, patient and steady, much like the quiet kindness that had brought them together in the first place. 3 months into his new role, Marcus stood before a small gathering of community members at a local center, presenting the first results of the Roadway Forward program. His hands no longer trembled the way they had during his early days at Whitfield Industries. He had grown comfortable speaking in front of groups, comfortable navigating the corporate language that once felt foreign to him, though he never lost the grounded, practical approach that made him so effective at connecting with the families the program was designed to help. In the past 3 months, we've provided free or heavily discounted repairs to over 200 families across the city, Marcus explained, gesturing toward a screen displaying simple charts and figures. We've also launched an emergency roadside assistance line specifically for single parents and elderly residents who might otherwise be stranded without help. The small crowd, made up of local families, community leaders, and a few Whitfield Industries executives, applauded warmly. Eleanor stood near the back of the room, watching Marcus with quiet pride, impressed by how naturally he had grown into a role that once seemed impossibly foreign to him. After the presentation concluded, Eleanor approached him as the crowd began dispersing. "That was excellent, Marcus. Truly excellent." "Thank you," he said, a genuine smile crossing his face. "It's strange standing up there, but it feels good, knowing we're actually helping people." "You've exceeded every expectation I had," Eleanor admitted. "Honestly, more than that, you've reshaped how this entire program operates, for the better." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, still not entirely comfortable accepting praise so directly. "I just try to remember what it felt like, being on the other side, wondering how I was going to afford the next repair bill, worrying constantly about unexpected expenses. That's precisely why this program works," Eleanor said. "Because you never forgot where you came from, even as things have started changing for you." Their conversation was interrupted by a member of the local news team, requesting a brief interview about the program's early success. Eleanor politely deferred, gesturing toward Marcus instead. "This is really his story to tell, not mine." Marcus hesitated slightly, uncomfortable with public attention, but agreed to a short interview, speaking honestly and simply about the program's mission, careful to keep the focus on the families being helped, rather than himself. When the brief segment aired that evening, it captured something genuine and relatable, quickly gaining attention across local social media, people sharing the story of a hard-working single father turned community program leader, inspired by his own difficult journey. The following weeks brought increased visibility for the program, additional funding opportunities, and growing recognition for Marcus within Whitfield Industries. But amid the professional success, his personal life was quietly transforming as well, particularly regarding his relationship with Eleanor, which had grown steadily warmer with each passing week. They began meeting for lunch occasionally, ostensibly to discuss program logistics, though their conversations frequently drifted into more personal territory, discussing childhood memories, difficult losses, hopes for their daughters' futures. Eleanor found herself opening up more than she had with anyone in years, gradually lowering the careful walls she had built around herself after countless experiences with people seeking to exploit her wealth and position. "I used to think," Eleanor admitted during one such lunch, "that genuine kindness without hidden motives simply didn't exist anymore. Not among adults, at least. You've changed my mind about that." "Everyone has motives," Marcus said thoughtfully. "Mine just happen to be pretty simple. I want Lily to grow up safe, happy, and proud of the life we've built together. Everything else follows from that." "That's a good motive to have," Eleanor said softly. Meanwhile, Lily and Sophie's friendship continued deepening as well, the two girls spending increasing amounts of time together, whether at the Whitfield estate or during simple outings Marcus arranged, despite his busier schedule. Sophie, who had grown up largely isolated due to security concerns and her mother's understandable caution, blossomed under the easy warmth of her new friendship, laughing more freely, worrying less about appearances and expectations. "I like hanging out with you," Lily told Sophie one afternoon, as they sat together in the Whitfield garden, weaving flowers into simple bracelets. "You don't act like the other rich kids I've seen on television." Sophie laughed. "I don't really know how to act like that. My mom raised me to care about real things, not just appearances." "My dad's the same way," Lily said proudly. "He always says honest work matters more than fancy things." "Your dad's pretty amazing," Sophie said sincerely. "I think my mom likes him, likes him. Lily giggled, glancing over with curious excitement. "You think so? That would be so cool. Then we'd basically be sisters." Sophie smiled, though a small worry crept into her thoughts as well. "It would be nice, but it's complicated too. Our families are really different." "Different isn't bad," Lily said simply, with the straightforward wisdom only children seem to possess. "Different can be good, if people care about each other enough." Back at Whitfield Industries, Tensions began emerging as Marcus's growing success and closeness with Eleanor caught the attention of certain board members, particularly a longtime executive named Gerald Thornberry, who viewed Marcus's rapid rise with suspicion and thinly veiled resentment. "I don't understand why we're placing so much trust and resources behind a program run by someone with absolutely no corporate experience," Gerald argued during a board meeting Marcus attended to present quarterly results. "No offense intended, Mr. Delaney, but perhaps a more experienced hire would better serve the company's long-term interests." Marcus remained calm despite the pointed comment, though he felt the familiar sting of being underestimated once again. "I understand the concern, but the results speak for themselves. We've helped over 500 families now, with program costs remaining well under budget. Numbers can be manipulated to look favorable," Gerald pressed further, clearly unwilling to let the matter drop easily. "I simply question whether personal relationships are influencing business decisions here." The room fell uncomfortably silent, several board members exchanging uneasy glances at the thinly veiled accusation, directed toward both Marcus and Eleanor's professional judgment. Eleanor, seated at the head of the table, felt anger rising within her, though she maintained careful composure. "Gerald, I'd advise you to review the actual financial reports before questioning results you clearly haven't examined closely," Eleanor said firmly, her voice cool and controlled. Marcus was hired based on merit and demonstrated character, qualities this company desperately needs more of, frankly. Gerald opened his mouth to respond further, but Eleanor continued before he could interrupt. "This meeting is concluded. Marcus, thank you for the thorough presentation." After the meeting adjourned, Marcus found himself lingering near the elevator, processing the uncomfortable exchange. Eleanor joined him a few minutes later, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry about that," she said. "Gerald has always been resistant to change, particularly changes he doesn't personally control." "It's all right," Marcus said, though his voice carried a hint of lingering frustration. "I'm used to people questioning whether I belong in rooms like that." "You belong there more than most people who've been in that boardroom for decades," Eleanor said firmly. "Don't let his insecurity make you doubt that." Marcus studied her for a long moment, appreciating her defense, though a small worry lingered in his thoughts. "Eleanor, I need to ask you something honestly. Are people going to keep questioning whether my position here is genuinely earned, or whether it's connected to whatever this is, between us?" Eleanor considered his question carefully before responding. "Some people will always find reasons to doubt things they don't understand or control, but the work you've done speaks entirely for itself, regardless of anything personal happening between us. I don't want Lily's future, or my own reputation, built on assumptions that I only got here because of a personal relationship," Marcus admitted honestly. "That matters to me, deeply." "I understand completely," Eleanor said gently. "And for what it's worth, your position here was secured entirely on merit, long before anything personal developed between us. I want you to trust that, Marcus, as much as I trust it myself." Their conversation was interrupted by Eleanor's assistant hurrying over with an urgent message, pulling her attention toward another pressing matter. But the brief exchange lingered in both their minds throughout the remainder of the day, an honest acknowledgement of the complicated, evolving relationship quietly developing between them, filled with genuine affection, but also legitimate concerns about how the outside world might perceive their connection. That evening, after picking Lily up from her after-school program, now held at a significantly nicer facility thanks to his improved salary, Marcus found himself reflecting deeply on the day's events. Lily chattered excitedly about her day, unaware of the tension weighing on her father's thoughts. "Daddy, can Sophie come over this weekend? She's never seen our apartment before." Marcus glanced sideways at his daughter, considering the request thoughtfully. "I don't know, sweetheart. Our apartment's pretty small compared to what she's used to." "She won't care about that," Lily insisted confidently. "She just wants to spend time with us. That's what friends do." Marcus smiled softly, ruffling his daughter's hair affectionately. "All right, we'll figure something out." Later that evening, once Lily had fallen asleep, Marcus called Eleanor, wanting to address the earlier tension directly, rather than allowing it to fester unspoken between them. "I've been thinking about what happened today," he began carefully. "I meant what I said, about wanting my success here to stand entirely on its own merit." "I know," Eleanor replied softly, "and it does, Marcus, truly. I also don't want to hide whatever this is developing between us," he continued honestly. But I don't want it to complicate things either, for you professionally or for our daughters. There was a thoughtful pause on Eleanor's end of the line. Maybe we take things slowly then, she suggested finally. Let the program continue proving itself clearly, separate from personal matters, and let whatever's developing between us grow naturally, without unnecessary pressure or scrutiny. That sounds reasonable, Marcus agreed, relief evident in his voice. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for being honest, Eleanor replied warmly. That's something I've valued about you from the very beginning. As their call ended, both found themselves smiling quietly into the darkness of their respective homes, comforted by the honest, careful understanding they had reached together. Neither rushed the growing connection between them, choosing instead to nurture it patiently, mindful of the responsibilities and complexities surrounding their unique situation. Over subsequent weeks, the Roadway Forward program continued proving increasingly successful, silencing most skeptics within the company through consistent, measurable results. Marcus's confidence grew steadily alongside the program's achievements, and slowly, even Gerald Thornbury's pointed skepticism began fading beneath undeniable evidence of the program's genuine impact on struggling families throughout the city. Meanwhile, Lily's visit with Sophie to their modest apartment proved to be exactly the joyful, uncomplicated afternoon Lily had hoped for, Sophie delighting in simple activities like baking cookies together and watching cartoons on their small television, entirely unconcerned with the modest surroundings that felt worlds away from her usual luxurious environment. This was honestly one of the best afternoons I've had in a long time, Sophie admitted as Marcus drove her home that evening, Lily already asleep in the back seat after their busy day together. I'm glad, Marcus said sincerely. You're welcome anytime, Sophie. Truly. Can I ask you something? Sophie said hesitantly. Of course. Do you like my mom? Like really like her? Marcus glanced briefly at the road ahead, considering his response carefully before answering honestly. I do, Sophie. Very much, actually. Sophie smiled softly, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. Good. I think she really likes you too. And honestly, I think it's a good thing. For both of us. Marcus smiled quietly to himself, feeling a warmth settle comfortably in his chest, a feeling of genuine hope for a future he could never have imagined just a few short months earlier, back when his life had felt like nothing more than an endless, exhausting cycle of survival. Now, for the first time in longer than he could remember, the future felt full of genuine possibility, built not on luck or charity, but on honest hard work, genuine kindness, and the unexpected connections that had grown from a single, simple act of stopping to help a stranger on a rainy night. A full year had passed since the night Marcus stopped on a dark, rain-soaked highway to help a stranded teenager with a flat tire, and the changes in his life since then felt almost impossible to fully comprehend. He stood now in a bright, spacious kitchen, far larger than the cramped apartment he and Lily once called home, watching his daughter chase their new golden retriever puppy across the backyard, her laughter carrying easily through the open window. Roadway Forward had expanded significantly over the past year, now operating in 3 additional cities, having helped thousands of families access affordable vehicle repairs and emergency roadside assistance. Marcus had been promoted twice since his initial hiring, now overseeing the entire national expansion of the program, a position that once would have seemed impossibly distant from the exhausted mechanic who used to work double shifts just to keep up with monthly bills. But of all the changes in his life, none compared to the quiet, steady happiness that had grown between him and Eleanor over the past year. What began as careful, patient conversations over lunch had blossomed gradually into something deeper, something neither of them had expected, but both had come to cherish deeply. They had taken things slowly, exactly as they promised each other early on, allowing their relationship to develop naturally, without rushing or unnecessary pressure. 6 months earlier, Marcus had officially moved into a comfortable house near the Whitfield estate, close enough that Lily and Sophie could see each other easily, though he had insisted on purchasing the home himself, using his own earned salary rather than accepting anything that might feel like charity. It was an important distinction to him, maintaining his independence and self-respect even as his life had transformed so dramatically. "Dad, watch this!" Lily called from the backyard, tossing a ball for the excited puppy to chase. Marcus smiled, stepping outside to watch his daughter's joyful energy, a stark contrast to the quiet, careful child she had sometimes been during their harder years. when worry about money and stability often weighed silently on both their shoulders. Now, at 8 years old, Lily radiated confidence and happiness, secure in the knowledge that her father no longer had to constantly worry about how to provide for their basic needs. Eleanor's car pulled into the driveway a short while later, Sophie hopping out excitedly to join Lily and the puppy in the backyard. Eleanor walked over to where Marcus stood watching, slipping her hand comfortably into his. "They never seem to run out of energy," Eleanor observed, smiling as she watched the two girls laughing together. "I'm grateful for that friendship every single day," Marcus said sincerely. "Lily's happier than I've seen her in years." "Sophie feels the same way," Eleanor said. "Having a real friend, someone who genuinely cares about her without any hidden motives, has meant more to her than I think either of us fully realized at first." They stood together comfortably for a moment, watching their daughters play, before Eleanor spoke again, her voice carrying a note of gentle seriousness. "Marcus, I wanted to talk to you about something." He turned toward her, noticing the thoughtful expression on her face. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "The community center opening this weekend," Eleanor began. "The one you've worked so hard to help establish, specifically designed to offer free vehicle education classes alongside the repair assistance program." "What about it?" Marcus asked curiously. "I'd like you to name it," Eleanor said simply, "after whoever, or whatever, feels most meaningful to you. This program exists because of the example you set that very first night, helping Sophie without expecting anything in return. It feels only right that you should have this honor." Marcus considered her words carefully, memories flooding back of his late wife, of the difficult years following her passing, of the countless nights spent worrying about Lily's future, and finally, of the unexpected kindness that had reshaped everything since that rainy night on the highway. "I'd like to name it after my wife," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "Rebecca's way. She always believed in helping others, even when we barely had enough for ourselves. I think she'd be proud of what this program has become." Eleanor squeezed his hand gently, understanding the depth of emotion behind his words. "I think that's a beautiful choice, Marcus. Truly beautiful." That weekend, a large crowd gathered for the grand opening of Rebecca's Way Community Center, filled with families who had personally benefited from the Roadway Forward program over the past year, alongside local community leaders, Whitfield Industries employees, and curious members of the press eager to cover the heartwarming story that had captured public attention months earlier. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out over the crowd, Lily sitting proudly in the front row beside Sophie, both girls beaming with excitement. Eleanor stood just off to the side, watching him with quiet pride and unmistakable affection. "A year ago," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the emotion evident beneath his words, "I was simply a tired mechanic, driving home after a long shift, trying my best to raise my daughter alone while honoring the memory of my late wife. I never imagined that stopping to help a stranger with a flat tire on a rainy night would lead me here, standing before all of you today." He paused, glancing briefly toward Eleanor and Sophie before continuing. "This program and this community center exist because of a simple truth I've always believed in, one my wife taught me long before I ever understood how deeply it would shape my life. Kindness, given freely without expectation of anything in return, has a way of coming back to you in ways you could never predict or imagine." The crowd applauded warmly, many wiping away tears, moved by the genuine sincerity evident in every word Marcus spoke. After his speech concluded, Eleanor joined him at the podium, addressing the crowd briefly herself. "When my daughter came home safely because of a stranger's kindness, I made a promise to myself to find a way to honor that kindness meaningfully," Eleanor said. "Marcus Delaney has exceeded every expectation I ever had, not just as a leader within our company, but as a genuine example of character and integrity that I hope inspires everyone here today." As the ceremony concluded and the crowd began exploring the newly opened community center, Sophie and Lily ran off together excitedly to explore the new facilities, their easy friendship a beautiful symbol of how two very different worlds had woven together seamlessly over the past year. Later that evening, after the crowds had dispersed and the excitement of the day had settled into a peaceful quiet, Marcus and Eleanor found themselves alone together near the community center's newly planted garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. "Today was perfect," Eleanor said softly, leaning comfortably against his shoulder. "It really was," Marcus agreed. I still can't quite believe how far we've come, from that rainy night on the highway to standing here today. Neither can I, Eleanor admitted. But I'm grateful every single day that you stopped that night, Marcus. Not just for what it meant for Sophie's safety, but for everything it's brought into both our lives since. Marcus turned to face her fully, taking her hands gently in his own. Eleanor, I've been thinking about something important, something I want to ask you, if you're ready to hear it. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, sensing the significance behind his careful tone. I'm listening. These past months with you, watching our daughters become sisters in every way that truly matters, building something meaningful together through this program, it's given me a kind of happiness I honestly never expected to find again after losing Rebecca, Marcus said, his voice steady and sincere. I love you, Eleanor, completely and honestly, and I'd like nothing more than to build a future together, as a family. Tears gathered in Eleanor's eyes, though her smile radiated genuine joy. I love you too, Marcus, more than I ever imagined possible, especially after so many years of guarding my heart so carefully. Marcus reached into his pocket, producing a simple, elegant ring, one he had chosen carefully himself, understanding that Eleanor valued sincerity and genuine meaning far more than extravagance. Eleanor Whitfield, will you marry me? Eleanor laughed softly through happy tears, nodding immediately. Yes, Marcus, absolutely yes. As they embraced beneath the softening evening sky, Lily and Sophie appeared at the edge of the garden, having witnessed the entire moment from a short distance away. Both girls erupted into excited cheers, running forward to join the joyful embrace, their laughter mixing beautifully with the quiet happiness of the two adults who had found each other through the most unexpected of circumstances. Does this mean we're really going to be sisters now? Lily asked excitedly, practically bouncing with joy. It absolutely does, Marcus confirmed, laughing warmly as he pulled both girls into the embrace alongside Eleanor. Sophie wiped happy tears from her own eyes, smiling brightly at the man who had once stopped to help her on a dark, rainy highway without ever imagining the profound way that single act of kindness would eventually reshape both their families forever. I always knew you were something special, Marcus, from that very first night. As the sun finally disappeared beneath the horizon, painting the sky in soft, gentle colors, the newly formed family stood together in the quiet garden, surrounded by the community center built from genuine compassion and hard-earned success. It was a beautiful reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness, offered freely and without expectation, hold the remarkable power to change lives completely, weaving together entirely different worlds into something far more meaningful and beautiful than anyone could have ever predicted on an ordinary rainy night.